What's something, guys and gals? This is Lance here once again. So I'm just making this video kind of like a sort of a long eloquent eloquent question. Usually I like to look things in a scientific perspective. There's got to be, science is, trying to look at observation, trying to find the questions to our answers or whatnot, and theoretical study, hypothesis, and scientific method. But sometimes I feel like I like to believe in some superstitious nonsense. Sometimes I like to believe that my zodiac somehow represents how I feel and behave, and that I reciprocate that with other people when I find out what their zodiac is, and try to connect the lines. Or at one point where I used to believe in karma, or like numbers, like reoccurring numbers. But this particular superstition about numbers, reoccurring numbers that you just seem to come across, that is something that to me was always the hardest to debunk. That I could tell myself that karma doesn't really exist, and that I shouldn't be doing just good things for the fear of having bad returns. Just doing good things because I know it's just the right thing to do. And like the zodiac, because certain people act different ways, is contrary to what the zodiac tells you. But with numbers, it was always hard because I couldn't really explain why exactly this number kept reoccurring. And this particular number, it's in the title. I call it 1014. Now, it's not the number 1014, because the weird thing is that most of the time these two numbers always are like together, but they're split. They're usually split in two. And what's kind of weird is that this number, as I imagine, is following me. Now, I tried to look it up and try to see what it was all about. It was apparently like an angel number or something like that. But there has to be a more specific explanation, because when I was looking up all these other angel numbers, they were pretty much saying the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, you got to keep doing what you do, blah 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 blah. So here is my experience with the number 1014. So when I am involuntarily looking at the time, whether or not usually I know when I'm intentionally looking at the time, because I know it's going to be 10:14 soon. But when I'm not trying to force myself to see the time, or trying to look at the time and make sure I didn't miss 10:14, I catch 10:14. And most of the time it'd usually be the morning, like 10:14 a.m. and 10:14 p.m. Sometimes I have woken up at 10:14 a.m. It's strange. The second time, well, the other times that I have seen this number reoccur is strangely in video games. So, like, if I go to like a merchant in the video game and I sell some items, I get like 1014. Usually, how much money they have left, when I'm just looking by to see how much money they have left. And once again, I'm not intentionally trying to search for it. It keeps finding me. So, or like in Borderlands 2, where like with the ammo, not including the ammo within the gun's clip, like specifically with this particular SMG, I would always get 1014 bullets. And like with video games like that, it's usually the only time where the number 1014 doesn't usually get split. And in Left 4 Dead 2, there's a particular shotgun called the M1014, but that one I don't like to believe that's kind of a superstitious number, because somebody just decided to make that number up. And I could just say that it's my favorite gun because it has the number 1014, because that's so convenient. Even though I do like using the M1014 in a video game, not in real life. I've never touched a gun in my life. It's different. It's just it's not the same. And then other times where I've seen this recurring factor is like just in everyday life. So yesterday I went to a class for principles in marketing, and we had our syllabi, and we were supposed to see it. Well, the teacher asked us what day was our first exam, and like me, I was looking, and what I found out was that it was on October 14th, and the date 10/14. Strange. It's just so fucking strange. Just so weirdly convenient that every time I'm just doing something on my own, not even consciously or subconsciously thinking about the number 1014, and it just keeps popping up. Or what else? Oh, well, there was a little clip in a TV show called Auction Hunters where a man called out one of the units, and the unit, he said unit number 1014, and that's how he said it. He said unit number 1014, and unlike the M1014, that was something I was not expecting. That's not something I was going to expect. I didn't expect the person to just call out the unit number like that, 1014. It's just weird how this number always keeps, most of the time, this number always is split, 10/14. Usually it's not 1000 or 14 or 1014. It's always 10 slash or dash or the little colon to signify what time it is, 14. And I would like to believe that, somehow I'm trying to force myself to find it, but I know I'm not. I'm not trying to search for it. I'm not trying to find the number. Only occasionally do I try to force myself, and that's only when it's a certain time, like it's like 10:11, and I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, 10:14's coming up. So I subconsciously and I am voluntarily trying to find 10:14. But other than that, all the other times where I just pass on through and I find, oh, it's 10:14. Yeah, that's the weirdest thing too. And I've seen it happen when I would buy groceries, like my receipt would run up to 1014. Or, trying to think, there's just been so many damn occurrences. I'm only, like, listing the things that are just the most consistent and the most recent of my experiences with this number. And, I don't know, I don't know. I'm not really sure if I could explain this in any other fashion. I don't want to believe that I'm like majestic or special in some way because of the number. Although I would like to have some sort of explanation, but at this moment I just can't explain why. Why this fucking number just keeps following me. And and most of the time in the fashion that it does, with 10 and then 14 right next to it, but not exactly combined to make it 1014. That's why I always refer to it as 1014, not 1014. So if any of you out there that could possibly have some sort of explanation as to why this number would be following me, I mean, I know most of you probably don't know my personal experiences, so more than likely you probably won't have an answer that is specific to my lifestyle. But if it's one that I could possibly correlate with, that would be great. But anyway, that's just a little personal blog of mine with my personal experiences with that particular number. And as an added bonus, you have a number that's following you. And I don't mean a number that you voluntarily try to find. I mean a number that you are attempting to find, that you are not subconsciously looking for, that finds you. Because if you are trying to look for a number, that is not the same thing. You are trying to find it because you know how convenient it can be. Like 9/11. I mean, it's really too convenient of a number. Anyhow, enjoy.